All right, so we should be good. All right, y'all. Okay. Listen. Technology it ain't my ministry, okay? But it's all good. We're here. So, all right, y'all. So this week, um, we are continuing the conversation. Okay. So last week we talked about something that I think is really important for us to know, right? And that is that burnout is often an environmental issue and not a personal failure. Okay. So think systems, right? And not self. Okay. And so this week I want us to take the conversation a step further, right? Because something happens when women start to realize that they're unsupported. Many still stay in those environments because they're not sure what to do, right? It's not that they don't see it or that they become aware of it. It's that they've somehow just acquiesced to like that being their reality, right? I'm unsupported. It is what it is, right? Like how many times have you said, it is what it is, like I'll figure it out, I'll work around it, right? And so the question then today that I want you all to be pondering and sitting with as we kind of go into this conversation is shift from asking yourself, why am I burned out? Why am I so exhausted? Why am I so tired? To what context or environment am I asking myself to survive in? Okay. Because when we start to ask better questions, we start to see more clearly and we actually get more courage to take action on resolving whatever it is that we're not happy with or that's not working. So we're going to jump into that conversation today and excited. Listen, we got the whole crew here and I'm going to let Miss Stephanie, our legacy host, take it from here.
Hi, everyone, and happy Wealthy and Worthy Wednesday. Before we jump in today, I always like to share either a quote or to start with a stat. And I read something a couple of days ago that said that burnout isn't about how much we can carry, it's about what we're carrying and who's asking us to carry it. Some
Mm.
people are not overwhelmed because you lack discipline. You're overwhelmed because you're operating in a chaotic environment. And chaos disguised as opportunity is one of the fastest paths to burnout. So I want you all just to be mindful of the environments that you're operating in, especially in this season, because we are trying to do everything possible to help you eliminate burnout. So today we're going to jump right in, and I would love to start with you, Dr. Tiana. From your perspective, what does meaningful support look like for women who are ambitious and high performing beyond just your typical advice or encouragement that most people freely give out?
Oh, this is a tough one to answer. And it's a tough one to answer because I think it's an individual thing, right? Like help or support is defined by the person asking or seeking that help or support, right? So I can come in and say, well, I think this is helpful or this is supportive, but ultimately it boils down to you getting clear, creating space, margin is what I like to call it, in your life to be able to pause and ask those questions of yourself, right? Where am I needing support? What is feeling heavy right now, right? One of my favorite questions to ask my clients is, what keeps you up at night? Right? What is that thing where no matter how tired you are, you will wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's on your mind? Or when you first wake up in the morning, it's on your mind because you're like, oh, I still haven't solved that thing, right? That that thing is the starting place to get curious and for you to start to pinpoint where you need support. And then I would say being in community is what will allow you to better and more quickly identify what type of support you need once you identify that you actually need support. Because I think for many of you and many of me as well, right? High impact, highly capable, highly competent, right? sometimes it even takes a minute to realize that we need help, that we need support, that, that it's not working just trying to white knuckle it and push our way through and force our way through. It's not working for us. And so I think when we come into that awareness, it can be overwhelming because we've built our identities around it. And so it becomes a question of like, oh my gosh, who am I? And am I not as capable and as strong as I thought I was? Am I showing up weak? Right. And so I think those are some of the things that we have to work with on an individual level, but being in community gives us the courage to be able to do that. So
Right, yeah. And you just said something that I thought was interesting is that it takes us a while before we even know that we need support. So, Jeannie, how can we check in with ourselves to say, hey, what do I need right now? Because I think by the time most women ask for help, they're already burned out, right? They're already at the end. So, how can we understand much earlier in the process that we need help?
I'm always for recommending to women that they take a daily inventory that includes understanding their physical capacity, their mental capacity, their spiritual capacity, and the extras within their environment that can show up and that can help. I think often what happens and why women burn out so often is they're grossly disconnected. Societally, women are attuned to being the soothers, the nurturers, the carers, depending on when you're born, what birth order you have, what attachment style you develop, you are consistently creating an identity. And I loved how Dr. Tiana said this, the existential understanding that like productivity, motion, movement, success, all of these things are a part of my being. They're a part of an existential truth that I've accepted in myself or I've been groomed to accept within myself, depending on, like I said, your attachment style or your family order, birth order, things of that sort. Like we need to consistently be understanding from the moment we're waking up, what is it intuitively that helps me to feel connected to my body? So when you wake up and you thirst, get the water, drink. If you're waking up and your mind is running and it's highly anxious, connect to that. What's happening in those moments? Do I need a breath? Am I already thinking about the 8,000 things that I'm going to have to do today in this one moment? Anxiety is bred when we are in the future, well into the future, not into what is going on for me right now in this moment. And I know that's how women think, right? That's how mothers think, right? That's especially how Black women think. I got to be prepared for everything that's going to come. And they think they've got to be prepared in this moment for everything that's not due in this moment. It's actually not due till 2. It's actually not due till tomorrow. It's actually not due till next month. Actually, that's not due for 6 months. Bring it down. So I encourage an inventory. Take an inventory to what you need in the moment. And that means, hey, what's going on for me right now in this immediate sense, in my body, in my soul, in my mind. And that's how we can stay connected.
I love it. So,
Mind,
Luana,
body,
for you, my question is when Jeannie talks about taking daily inventory, how can women take daily inventory when they feel as if their lives have been turned upside down by any type of major personal issue?
How can they take inventory? First off, it looks by slowing down a bit, especially when your world has been blown up. Like you cannot go into a realization of trauma like full force, head first, 100 miles per hour. You just can't do it. You'll end up crashing every time. And I think for me, when my world was blown up with the DNA surprise, for me, it knocked the wind out of me. So I had no choice but to sit down. My body started to absorb a lot of the trauma. So it started to respond. My health started to decline a bit. My mental health started to decline. And so really, really halting for a moment and trying to understand or get the resources to help you understand, what am I experiencing right now and what is going on? Because you can't fix anything if you don't know what needs to be fixed, right? And so for me, it was that slowing down. It was that pulling in my resources, my girlfriends. I'm trying to give viewpoints that I don't have so that I'm making informed decisions and not just emotional decisions. And I think for a lot of us, taking that inventory of where we are, what the heck just happened to me? Just slowing down and coming to that realization first. And then from there, you can start putting the pieces together. But it's like a daily walk. You don't know when the Bible says renew, or when, the Bible says renew your mind daily. Like, it is a daily walk out here. Like, you truly need to renew your mind. And so, like, when you're dealing with anxiety and trauma and trying to sift through those things, like, you need to be feeding yourself positivity, from books to whatever shows you watch to social media. You have to pay attention to everything that goes into your ears, everything that you're watching, and slow down a bit and quiet all the noise around you so that you can feel and you can, take introspective look at what's going on with yourself. But yeah, the first step I would say is slow down, pull on your resources, and try to figure this thing out of where you are in the moment. You have to do that before you can take any steps.
Yeah, and I think that's really important about determining where you are in the moment, because when I think about most women, I think about myself. By the time you reach burnout or you feel like you're at capacity, you really don't even have the words to speak anymore, right? Because you're just like, I don't even know what I need. I don't know if I'm coming or if I'm going. So for you, Dr. Tiana, like, how do you help women navigate feeling like they just don't know where to start? Like, they know they're burned out, they know they're at capacity, but they literally do not know what to do other than just knowing that's where they are in life. How do you help women navigate that?
I first start with acknowledging how much courage it takes to raise your hand and say, I'm not okay. Right? My clients are coming to me because they know it's not working. The last thing I'm expecting them to have is the answer for how to make it work, right? That's my job. So, and in that, right, I'm not telling them how to make it work at all, because I am not the expert in their lives, right? What I am doing is giving them permission to sit in a space and to be witnessed, right? And for me to ask thoughtful questions that help them return to themselves. You already have the answer, right? You already have the answer. And I believe wholeheartedly, and I operate in this paradigm, whether I'm doing research, impact investing, or whether I'm coaching women in wealth, the people closest to the problem have the solution. And it is only my job to lend them my expertise, my skill sets, my toolkit to help them uncover what their path needs to be, right? So I'm lending my expertise to say, hey, I will let you borrow this until you find your own expertise. I will let you borrow my courage until you find your own courage, right? That is the beautiful part about coaching, that I have the ability to say, look at my scar, right? This is proof that bad things do happen, but healing is always possible, right? And so I feel like that's what makes it, at least for me, so exciting, because I don't have to have the answer. I don't, and I don't feel pressure or any of that to have the answer for you, right? I have ideas, I have things that have worked for me that I'm always happy to share, but ultimately my role is to help you return to what is true for you. And once you can get that space in your life to see that more clearly, you know what to do. And then from there, it's me just reminding you, right? Hey, this is what you said you wanted to do. Hey, this is who you said you wanted to be. Let's talk about that, right? Let's look at how far off you are from that, and like, what do you need from me to help you move closer to that. So I would say that is kind of how I go about doing it. And being very clear that if you're coming to me looking for somebody to just tell you what to do, I'm not the coach for you.
Right. And you actually, this is really good. And I'm going to expound on this a little bit more because I'm just kind of curious because we're talking wealthy and worthy, right? And so, as high functioning women, oftentimes, and I know I've been guilty of saying this too, I don't have time to not be okay. Like, I'll be fine, you know, I'll push through, right? But could you share a little with the women who are watching and even men, give them insight onto how not being okay and continuing to functioning could be hurting their businesses or even their careers?
Whoa, who was that question for?
That's for you. I mean, only because
Okay. All right. Well, that's a tough one. All right. Y'all ready? Y'all gonna have to just take a breath on this one, okay? Because when you resist your humanity, everything suffers. Period. Right? Everything suffers because regardless of whether you acknowledge it or not, and I coach my corporate clients on this often, people show up to work in the fullness of who they are, whether you acknowledge it or not. Okay. So whatever it is that you're dealing with internally in your personal life, when you show up to work or when you sit down at that desk to run your business as an entrepreneur, those things are going to seep out. They are going to show up everywhere. And you may not even notice it for a little bit, right? Because you may be able to kind of force yourself or force the results or force the outcome. But ultimately, life has a way of having us look at ourselves and eventually it won't work. And so you will start to feel like this is not working. And you will think, oh, maybe it's because I need a new business strategy, or maybe I need to, go after a new contract or do the next exciting and sexy thing, right? But what you're not realizing is that you take you everywhere. And so it is going to be disruptive to your life, to your business, to your career, and ultimately to your money. So people want to think that money is a separate thing. No, it's not. Money is nothing. It's energy. And when you bring that desperate energy or sick energy into a place that money is supposed to be flowing, right? You stop the flow. And so you'll start to see, areas where your money dries up or your business dries up. You can't find a referral to save your life, right? Like, you will start to see it show up and manifest in your life and in your business. And so it's a sign, right, that you should pause, take a deeper look, get curious about what's happening so that you can resolve those things and get the flow back into your life.
Right. I love it. So, Jeannie, I'm going to toss this over to you because when I think about burnout, right, you think about some of the symptoms of burnout. Sometimes it can be depression, sometimes it can be anxiety, sometimes it can be anger, all these things.
Yeah.
And they scream loud. But what I have found is that sometimes to silence that noise, people work harder. So what do you encourage your clients to do when they come in and they're burned out, they're anxious, they're angry, all because these are all symptoms of burnout, but you also see them working harder? What do you say to those people?
I tend to recommend to them first that before we're implementing any strategies or we're trying to change anything that's happening for them, that we're just reducing the shame and the guilt. Oftentimes people get to this space of burnout and they are irritable and they're yelling at their partners and they are, extremely exhausted, and because they are firstborns, right, who did all the work all the time and who are used to holding everybody up and who are used to having endless capacity for energy. They feel these deep senses of guilt about not producing. So we have to first, when they come right in, reduce that shame, the shame that, hey, we've gotten here and this is the place that we're at. And we need to talk through what that looks like. We need to acknowledge some of the systemic pressures that they've been under, gender expectations, emotional labor, workplace culture that is hustle culture that says keep moving all the time. And then we tell them where they are in that trajectory. When I hear a woman is already irritable, she's exhausted, she's feeling overwhelmed by everything, she's essentially all fuzzy and frizzed out by everything that's going on in life, and she's decided to work harder and put on herself even more pressure, I know fully that it is not her reacting. It is her responding to environment. It is her saying, there is something in my environment that is pushing me and telling me that this is the only way that I can show up. And if I don't show up differently than that, if I don't shift, I'm going to be letting people down. And that is an issue. And sometimes it's just the act of saying, hey, let me ask you a question. If your boss was like, you know what? I've been seeing you overworking. I think you should take a couple of vacation days. What would you say? If your husband or your partner said to you, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this off your shoulders today because it seems like you've been working really hard. What would you say? If instead of your children always coming to you to manage that situation, and they started to come to your mother or your grandmother or your grandfather or whomever else is in the life as a support, how would you feel about it? Would it take a weight off of you? Or would you feel like you need to continue going and moving? And many women, I ask them those questions when I force them to recognize how they're not utilizing supports, how they're not delegating, how they're wanting to do it all themselves, because if they don't do it, who else is going to do it? Who else is going to hold it? Roz, you said that. That's for you, just so you know. Who else is going to do it? Who else is going to hold it? It won't get done. I'm showing them, I'm forcing them to confront the fact that it doesn't have to be them, and that inside of the environment that is what they have been choosing, which is okay. It's fine. We all do it. It is not supporting their growth and their wellness. And sometimes bringing that in is enough to start to break the tethers to that way of showing up and being.
Yeah. And I see that Kelly Montgomery just said, it is not selfish to take great care of yourself. Change your mindset and free yourself from what others think about you and how you take care of yourself. And I absolutely love that. And that kind of segues into my next question for you, Talana. From your own personal experience, what was your first signal during any given time in your life where you knew that you felt unsupported? What was that first signal for you to know that without even naming it as burnout?
Agitation. Frustration, because I had this expectation in my head of how this person was supposed to show up for me, and they did not do it, and I am peed off now. So agitation is usually the first sign, like, like that. They get on my nerves, or no one ever shows up for me, or da 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 da. You have this narrative in your head of what it is. That's typically the first sign. But if we continue to allow that to build, personally, resentment starts building in our personal relationships. I think professionally, we start to, what would I say professionally? Professionally, we start to go into survival mode, right? So our vision is clouded, and we replace revision with, with just us wanting to take over and rule the world, and just really go into survival mode. So we're working more, like you said, Jeannie, you're working more, you're taking on more responsibility. You are in that mode that I'm the only one that knows how to do it right. If I don't do it, it won't get done, and all those narratives that we tell ourselves. And it starts to show up for me once I get into those modes where I'm taking all of that on, not just things on, but mental space. Like the narratives we tell ourselves, they just start to pile up as well. And you build resentment like crazy over time. And then we start to act out of those feelings, which is sometimes yelling, which is having disagreements instead of conversation, and it starts to then manifest in our body. So like me, my hair started falling out, right? For some, maybe I just talked to a friend that had a panic attack.
Mm.
every day, right? And so it starts to show up in our bodies in many different ways. But for me, agitation for sure is the first, for
Yeah.
sure.
I want to speak to something, Stephanie, because I want to make
Mhm,
sure. And Roz, I just want to read your comment here because I think it's wonderful. No one is coming for me is the soundtrack of a
mhm,
high functioning woman.
mhm.
My heart bleeds for you, but that is absolutely true for many women. But I want to
Yes,
be clear on something because I don't ever want women to think to themselves that there isn't some level of truth to this conception that like
mhm,
if I don't do it, it won't get done. I don't ever want you thinking that you're delusional for believing that and there's always someone else who can do it. I want to validate that that can be a reality and it is often many people's reality and it is a heartbreaking reality. But I also want to be sure that we are clear that the standards that many women create for themselves in that realm are very, very high. And it's what I spoke to, right? It's this idea of like, you have this understanding that it's got to be done and it's got to be done right now. And if it isn't done
right.
right now, it's entirely detrimental. When you are the one doing, and you must be the one doing because you're the only one who can do, you have to decide and understand how to prioritize what needs to be done in this moment and what doesn't need to be done until the next day or what doesn't need to be done until this time. There's a difference in being type A organized and needing everything to fall into place just exactly how it is. And that's overfunctioning and overwhelm, and understanding that when we prioritize, when we create hierarchies for what actually needs our time and attention, we do much better at caring for ourselves. So I want to be clear. I never want women thinking they are delusional for some of those types of thought. While they can exist in hyperbole, they don't necessarily always exist in hyperbole. Sometimes they are the absolute reality. And I want to respect those women. So just want to make sure I say
Yes.
that for us. Yeah.
That's so good. If I could piggyback off that. So, just yesterday, me and my husband we were talking, and I was talking about some frustrations that I had, like in business, and he was like, "Well, didn't we build a system for that? Like last year, we built a system for that, right?" And I'm like, "You're right, we did." So here I am frustrated. The system has been created last year. I'm frustrated because things aren't happening the way I want them to, but the whole point of building the system was so that they can happen the way I wanted them to, right? We do the same thing in relationships. We have these systems that we have built up, these relationships, these communities that we have built up, and we will literally suffer in silence and not utilize the systems that we've been cultivating over time. And so I think that has a lot to do with fear. Sometimes it has a lot to do with pride, because we don't want to look like we don't have it together. But the moment you lean into the vulnerability, the moment you take that shame off and say, you know what, listen, I don't know everything. And honestly, I don't want to know everything. Right? But we do need to do better with leaning into the systems that we have cultivated, whether it's relationally or like technically for business. We really do need to lean into those systems and get the support that we need.
No, I love that. And I know we're coming up on time, but this has been so good. But Jeannie, I want to ask you this question too, because I've seen the engagement today, and I'm just curious if maybe you can speak to this because there are some folks who say, "Oh, I'm burned out." How will a woman know if she's burned out or if she's depressed? I mean, because sometimes, like I said
Yeah.
earlier, depression can be a sign of burnout,
Sure.
but maybe there's something deeper going on. How do women distinguish between the two so they're not putting a band-aid over it and calling it burnout when maybe it's not?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, I think that's tough, like you said, because the two items are not necessarily mutually exclusive. They can have crossover symptomatology. Um, so I think the best thing I can say is there's a criteria for depression that exists, right? While you can be burned out and you can be sad about it, persistent sadness looks very different. It looks like every single day I'm feeling very sad, I'm feeling down. It exists outside of a normative scale that you would have for yourself. Other symptoms like I'm not eating well or I'm eating way too much consistently, systems like sleeping well or sleeping way, way less. Many times, women who are in burnout, they are very fatigued because they are skimping on sleep. They're not sleeping well. They're very restless in those ways. Where in depressive states, generally speaking, there is an issue with it tend to be hypersomnia is what you see in more depressive cases. So it really is like I'm having difficulty getting out of bed. I feel really I almost feel tethered to my bed in a way that is pretty overwhelming. So symptomatology just is generally much more protracted when it comes to depressive symptomatology than it is with burnout. Um, and I would say look for definitely the sadness quality, the mood depletion. If you are having extreme moods, that's always something where we need an evaluation. Extreme moods that have lasted too long are like, let's go understand what's going on with that. While these things can accompany burnout, when they're persistent, that's when we tend to know that we need to take a look at whether we're depressed or have an anxiety disorder as well, because anxiety and depression can go hand in hand also.
Okay, thank you. That is really helpful. So, ladies, before we end today, I do want to end with one final question because I think it's really important that we always leave the folks who are watching with some advice on how to be able to move forward in life. And so, I guess my final question for each of you is if someone listening today is questioning whether it's them or their environment, what guidance would you offer them? And I'll start with you, Talana.
I would just state, as I did, a little earlier, where take inventory yourself, but also utilize the resources around you. So if that looks like calling a therapist to help you navigate mentally what it is you're feeling, I look at it as a big old puzzle piece, right? Or this big old picture of you, and it's been like it's a puzzle and it's been like dismantled, right? You need someone to come in and help you take inventory of all the pieces. What pieces belong, what pieces do not belong in this new picture of life that you have, ahead of you, right? And you have someone help you sort out the pieces, and then you slowly start to build the pieces together until your full picture is formed. So I would say get the assistance that you need to help you figure out what it is. You can't do anything prior to doing that. So, yeah.
I love it. And Jeannie, we've gotten a lot of guidance for you today. So if it's okay, I want to give it over to Dr. Tiana to let her provide the final guidance.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. My final piece of advice. This is if they're struggling to determine whether it's them or the environment.
Yes.
Okay. My advice for my women is that it's always the environment. I just
It's never you.
Right? Like, and not to say that it's never you, right? But I would say the first place to check is the environment first, right? Because it will give you the feedback that you need. And it will, and I say environment first because to me, environments act as a mirror oftentimes, right? And so it will reflect back to you, right? Like, what is the problem or what maybe is working well, right? And so it gives you an opportunity to see yourself a little more clearly when you compare it to the environment and what's happening around you or adjacent to you, right? And so sometimes that is the best way for us to even get clarity of like maybe our own pain points and maybe places we need to take a better look at or deeper look at or get more curious about. And so I often caution it because to me, it's like, I think it's easy and our default often tends to be, oh, it's a personal failure. It's this, and it's like, many times it's not, it's a systemic failure, and those things show up for a variety of reasons, right? Like Jeannie had mentioned, sometimes it's gender norms, sometimes it's expectations of culture, sometimes it's, I don't know, wifing, momming, all the thinging, right? Like it can just be so many dynamics and so many pressures that you get overwhelmed and you're like, well, it has to be me. I have to be doing this wrong, right? I have a lot of clients who are like, but I've done everything right, right? Like how many times have you said that or even thought that to yourself, right? I've done everything right. Why is this still not working? Or I've done everything right. Why does this still feel so hard?
It has nothing to do with you.
And when that happens, that's your signal. Okay, let me assess and adjust because clearly something in the environment is not being supportive of my needs right now. And that is an okay thing. And it's really an important thing for you to do and a practice that's important for you to have because as you grow and evolve, your needs are going to grow and evolve. And so you want to be flexible in that way of like, okay, I can be responsive to what's happening right now, and I can make those adjustments in real time without shaming myself or judging myself or others, okay, about what's happening right now, right? So oftentimes it's not what's happening, it's the story that we tell ourselves about what's happening that causes us pain. And so it's like we have to be honest about that, and but also be kind to ourselves. So that would be my little advice for you until next Wednesday.
And then look, and then understanding that sometimes it requires you to change, and sometimes it requires you to change the environment.
Absolutely.
Oh, good. That's absolutely.
Yeah. So awesome.
Absolutely.
This
Well,
stuff.
lady, thank you so much again for a wonderful conversation. We've enjoyed it, and we've also enjoyed all the comments. Continue to comment every single Wednesday when we go live. Share with a friend, share with a cousin, share with a sister, a brother, whoever. Share with everyone and let them know every Wednesday we are going live with Wealthy and Worthy Wednesdays. Until next time, we will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.